Good morning. I'm Michelle Budzek. I'm from the Partnership Center, and we own and develop Vesta, the virtual electronic system that takes care of the homeless in our community. You know, I started this gig kind of a while ago. In 1999, I sat down with a whole bunch of folks. I was the facilitator of Cincinnati's Continuum of Care for the Homeless. And I had the privilege and blessing to sit down every year with a group of homeless people that the agency sent to me to talk to me about homelessness. And I said to them as we were contemplating this data thing, what difference would this make? Is this okay with you? You know, is this going to be a problem? Because if it was a problem, I didn't want to do it. And you know what they said? Michelle, tattoo something on me if you can get me housing. I don't care if my name is in a database. Take my social security number if you can get me benefits and housing. And then they said to me, and they've said this every year since, the way out of homelessness is for somebody to know my name, and that's somebody to know their shit. Let me have a worker that knows what they're doing, and let me have them know and relate to me. And every time I meet a homeless person that's moved out of homelessness, and I talk to them about it, they can tell me the name of the worker that moved them out, right? So it's a real thing. It's not about data that's just a number in a system. It's about a real person in a system, which I think sometimes we forget when we're looking at these huge databases, right? So what happened in Cincinnati was the homeless folks started and they said, okay, and then the agencies started coming on. And slowly, by 2004, every agency in the city of Cincinnati that served homeless people was participating in Vesta. That's an incredible, incredible feat. And you are the only place in the country still today that can claim that feat. It is just incredible. We know the name of every person sleeping under a bridge in Cincinnati. We know the name of every person in a shelter. We know the name of every person in transitional housing and in permanent housing and that's getting services. That's incredible. But more than that, we know a lot of stuff about those people, right? And we know a lot of stuff about the programs that are serving them. And we built a database because it worked for three sectors. It worked for the homeless people themselves because they get a homeless cert and they can move around. And last month at our largest shelter, Shelter House Volunteer Group, formerly Drop-In Center, we opened Vesta to clients getting into their own data themselves and being able to look at and send message to workers and see what they've done today and see how much they've succeeded. Isn't that cool? We didn't just use a database that some agency could report how many people they served on. We built a database that people could use themselves. So that's one. The second one is we built a database that works for the agencies. So Vesta collects all kinds of crap that I don't care about, but that the agencies care about. That's really, really, really important for that agency to be able to tell that funder how many pink-eyed people they served this year. That's really important to make that data good and useful. Means that the agency is going to use it. The people that are participating are going to actually use that database. And the third thing is that funders trust the database. They know that if the information comes out of Vesta, the information is going to be right and we're not going to skew it, and that we know, in fact, how many people are homeless in a given year. In 2014, there were an unduplicated count of 7,810 homeless people, and we know the name of every one of those people, and we didn't count them twice or three times or four times, and we didn't pull a number out of our behind, as we used to do. When I started this gig in 1985, Buddy Gray used to say there are 25,000 homeless people in Cincinnati, and I'd go, how do we know that? Well, now I know that was a little bit of an exaggeration because we counted people twice sometimes, right? Or 3 times or 4 times. And now we don't do that. We know how to separate those counts. We know that 13% of the homeless stay on streets and 16 in shelter, in transitional housing, and 71% of them were sheltered last year. We know that there were babies born in our shelters and that there were elderly men that died on the street. And we know their names, and we were able to contact their families when they died. We know, though, that what homelessness looks like longitudinally now in our community. We know the numbers, the real numbers of the real people, and whether they're coming or going, whether there's new people coming into the system or people leaving. And we know when the numbers changed, why they changed was just really important. Hey, Jeff, we dropped 38% of people in street outreach because one of our largest street outreach providers moved from serving people on the street to serving people inside, and so that number went down. So some people got left out of the count. Or we know that we decreased 41% of our transitional housing beds as we shifted focus and made them permanent housing, and so those people came out of the count. So did the count really go down? Maybe not. We know that we measure and our agencies measure the same things. So performance outcomes matter. Performance outcomes matter in funding. We've been able to line up the HUD outcomes with the United Way outcomes, with many of the foundation outcomes. And so we're not asking people to measure all kinds of different stuff. We're asking people to measure stuff that really matters, right? We're talking about homelessness. Did you get a home at the end? I really don't care how many AA meetings you went to. That's nice, but I don't care. It didn't get you a house. What got you a house is all that stuff that led up to that. And God knows we count that and look at it and can tell you in indicators why they got there when they got there. But I don't care about those indicators if they never got there. So we know how many people exited the street and returned. So 37% of the people that lived on the street exited, and in 2 years we saw them again, right? But that means like 70% of people we didn't see again. Isn't that great? That's street homeless. That's the guys that are asking you for money on the corner. That's pretty incredible. Those are the kinds of things we're measuring projects on. We're measuring them in the average gain in income. You can't live in a housing unit if you can't pay for it. Where are you getting the money from? Is that from Social Security? Is that from Medicaid? Where are you getting the money? How many employments? These are our transitional housing measures. How long did you stay in housing? Look, we've got people in housing that we've had in housing, some of them for 10 years. And most importantly to me, the outcome, street outreach workers and the safe shelter workers are now working on the same kind of level of performance measurement, looking at engagement as a step of measurement. We look at, can we divert you from homelessness? Can we stop you from becoming homeless? So at the front door of our system, our CAP agency, central access point, where you call in for shelter because you're homeless and you need a shelter bed, if we can change you from coming into shelter to going somewhere else, we're going to divert you from shelter. And we've done a really, really, really good job of that. Barb Terry, who's here, and I dreamed this up a few years ago together, and since then, only 10% of the people that we've served have ever been homeless. Barb, you did a good job. We know the special needs of the people that are experiencing homelessness. The mental health rises to the top, but we also know that when we look at our data next to the mental health board's data, that it's the same people. That was incredible to me because I thought the mental health board wasn't serving our folks. What I found out was, in general, they are. But I also found out that we had some more than they did, and they had some more than we did. Very small parameters. That was not what we thought. That was not how we advocated. And so we've changed our way of doing business a little bit with the Mental Health Board. Not that we don't need more services, but we've changed the way we advocate. We looked at how many conditions folks have. We know exactly how many conditions of those last ones. And most importantly, look at how many people won't answer the question. Our folks in Cincinnati answer these questions on a regular basis, and I cannot tell you how honest they are. As I sit and do an intake and they say, did you want to know where I bought that drug? No, honey, I just want to know if you take drugs or not. We did a honest-to-God wonderful study with Kara Cole, who's here today, on HIV and T-cell data and longitudinal stay in health, and does your T-cell count improve the longer you stay in housing? And we know that it does, and now the nation is counting in all of our HMIS systems across the country a look at T-cells in relationship to health so that we can change the way health data is collected. Am I going? And we did medical insurance. We also have all of the emergency assistance centers in Vesta, which is another 80,000 people a year. So we carry probably the largest database of poor people around that are honestly telling us their story. And we've begun taking a look at Medicaid and insurance, and we're so frustrated with, healthcare.gov and the Ohio system of how to get on Medicaid, that we rebuilt the system and built application to Medicaid through Vesta, which is improving people's abilities to get there. So we use the database not only for data, but to change the system. And if you only read one chapter in the book that you were given, I highly encourage you to read the chapter that Fred Karnas wrote, because he and I together in the mid-90s began this journey of HMIS before it really was a journey. And today Cincinnati is the National HMIS Data Lab. So out of Cincinnati comes the programming and the cohorts and the components for all of the reporting on homelessness that's done nationwide. And it's because of all of you folks in the audience that collect data for us. Thank you very much.